Over again. Welcome this evening, folks, to the last of our monthly on Monday events for 2025. I'm Senior Associate Dean Brian Cummings for Faculty Development in the School of Medicine. My colleague Nimisha Parekh is going to be joining us shortly. She is the Senior Associate Dean for Faculty HS Clinical Faculty in the School of Medicine. And tonight, our event is on coaching, mentorship, allyship, and sponsorship. Lots of words that sound similar but are slightly different. And with our esteemed panel tonight, we're going to learn more about that and get your questions and answers covered. So I'd like to welcome Amanda Swain, Emilie Chow, Michael Stamos, Khanh-Van to host our panel. And I don't think anyone has a slide presentation for tonight. Is that correct? That's what I suspected. So that makes sense. Really, we just have a series of questions that we'll be asking. We have Amanda Swain, the Executive Director of the Humanities Center in the School of Humanities. Emilie Chow is in the Department of Medicine, who runs the Mentoring Academy for HS faculty. Le-Bucklin, of course, is the Vice Dean for medical education, and Dean Stamos is the dean of the entire School of Medicine. So I will just open it up to the panel and ask the first question because it's a lengthy title is how would you folks define mentoring versus coaching in the context of academic medicine? So feel free to turn on your mic and
I guess I'll go first. Um,
thank you, Dr. Chow.
so I would say I always think of mentoring as more of a long-term relationship, someone that I've sort of known over a long period of time, even years, right? Who I meet with and engage with routinely, who really it's a great sounding board. And coaching, I think of as something maybe a little bit more short term, like maybe I'm working with a resident for or a fellow for a specific item, like maybe their application or their or a some project that they're working on. That's kind of the way I think of it in terms of time and coaching I feel is more specific, it's more focused. Mentoring is something that is more long term and more about sort of your career or your thoughts or your sort of ideals in general. That would be my interpretation.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I wrote down a few notes. I said longitudinal, long term, and it implies a relationship more than, I mean, it's often formatted either you were assigned a mentor and that worked out well for you, but commonly we see that people gravitate towards their own mentors as well. And I can think of my own career. I had several really important mentors throughout the years, and a couple of them are still my mentors now at this point in my career as well. So, and they often maintain that relationship and help you with things outside of work as well, right? Work-life balance and personal life. They know you, they take an interest in you, they often know your family, and it really is ideally long-term. Coaching is more transactional, right? And it's often, like you said, focused on a specific area or concern, or you're new to leadership and you want to make sure that your leadership skills are polished. And so I think it's a little bit more defined with a little bit more narrow of a scope in most cases.
So I've actually been trained and have experience as a higher education coach. So I did a coaching training program specifically for people who work in higher education, and I will early in 2026 take an exam with the International Coaching Federation to be certified. And I think these coaching, has a lot of different um, ways of thinking about it, but formally for the International Coaching Federation, which is the largest accreditation organization, coaching is really defined as a process of exploration in which the coach is assisting the coachee to discover their own strengths. It's internally focused in terms of, and I can talk about this later, asking questions that help the person themselves figure out what's important to them, what they want to do. Um, Whereas mentorship I see as more intentional guidance, and that comes from the experience and knowledge that the mentor has, focused on helping the mentee make decisions or figure things out. It could be navigating a school of medicine process. It could be finding resources for professional development or making decisions, like you said, about work-life balance. And often these are um, more long-term relationships, as you said, when you build really strong relationships, but they can also be shorter term. And coaching, there are people who work with the same coach for years, but usually not all the time. They come and go. Um, but in both cases, with coaching and mentorship, the focus is on the individual and not ourselves as the coach or the mentor.
Aha, I like that distinction. So, um, what are some strategies that mentors can use to help newer faculty or new mentees clarify their career goals and their values? That sounds like it's also kind of crossing the boundary of mentorship, which, I'm kind of thinking of from my role to coaching. So maybe, Amanda, you want to take that first?
Yeah, I have to be very upfront that I have very limited experience of academic medicine. So these are more general, although when I was finishing my history PhD, I worked 6 months as an interim program coordinator for the palliative care team at the University of Washington, and also then 6 months with the neonatology fellows program. So I have a little bit of a sense. Essentially, if you're thinking about kind of coaching as particularly defined as I was talking about it, it's about asking powerful questions. And you can ask powerful questions in any situation, whether it's in a formal relationship, as a mentor or coach or a supervisor. You can ask powerful questions with your friends and family. You could ask powerful questions of your um, patients and the students that you're training. A powerful question is an open-ended question that's designed to draw out what is underneath the surface. So they are how questions, they are what questions, they are why questions, um, and they're intended to help the person who's being coached or mentored to also look below the surface themselves. And it, based on someone's response, then you can ask a next question. And so it involves a lot of really careful listening to see kind of what's coming up and what the next question might be. Um, and that, like I said, can be used for any kind of situation. Um, I've used powerful questions with my nieces, as well as with higher education professionals and faculty that I coach.
KV, looks like you unmuted.
Yeah, so I can add to that just from a person who, I guess, at any one week or month, I may mentor a medical student, then a resident, then a faculty member, and then a dean even. And so there's different places in their career that they may be. So one of the things that Amanda spoke to was, asking these powerful questions and what does that mean? To ask a powerful question, because sometimes the most common reason someone may new meet with me is they say, well, you're a dean, I want to be a dean. And so, they want to know how I got here and things like that. And so a powerful question or coaching question might be something more open-ended, like, okay, you want to be a dean, but what brings you joy? What about that job attracts you and what brings you joy? Because sometimes when you talk them through it, they don't want to be a dean. Like dealing with people and on a daily basis is actually not what brings them joy. They might like the title, but in the end, when they walk themselves through, they realize actually I don't want to deal with people or disciplinary actions or money. I want to do this. I want to teach. So then they may talk themselves into a slightly different path that brings them joy. So that's an example of a coaching type question that's pretty open-ended and helps lead the person to to their own conclusions.
But helping them discover that for themselves, rather than telling them they're not cut out for this.
Exactly.
Right. Anything to add, Dean Stamos or Dr. Chow?
No, not really. Not to this particular topic. I think that's pretty well laid out.
Okay, then how about we explore the difference, being mindful of time, the difference between sponsorship and allyship. So, A, how would you define sponsorship and allyship, and how do they differ from mentorship?
So I can answer that. Yeah, I think both of them actually have to do with advocacy. So I think there is overlap. And in general, with all these terms, there is overlap. I have people like Dean Stamos, who on one day is my mentor, my coach, or another day my sponsor or ally. So I think we talk about these in terms just to get them in our heads and understand them, but they do kind of blend often. But both of them have to do with advocacy, sponsorship being, they talk a lot about, your mentor is someone you talk to, a sponsor is someone who talks about you. And so the sponsors, your champion, they're out there, they're talking positive about you. They're thinking about you when a position comes up. They mention your name, so they're your advocate that way. An ally is someone who stands up for you. So if in someone who maybe in tight situations backs you up or stands up for you, speaks up in difficult situations or in situations where you're not necessarily the person in authority and they have your back. That's how I think about who an ally is versus a sponsor. And again, it could be the same person. I mentioned Dean Stamos, for example. So in any one day, I may say, sorry guys, we gotta have everyone go through this one process, which people don't like having to go through processes. And he'll back me up by saying, we just have to do this. Like this is requirement, this is something that campus is expecting or something. So that's an allyship. That's standing up for me. That's backing me up. And then on another day, in terms of sponsorship, he may say KV would be the best person for this job or committee. So I think they do blend sometimes in the people that you're working with, but that's the slight difference between the two.
I think of coaching and mentorship as being sort of internally focused. So you're working with the individual about themselves, whereas allyship and sponsorship are externally focused. So it's using your own position to open opportunities or to be alongside someone and ensure they have the support that they need in different kinds of situations.
Right. So
I,
we have all kinds of folks on the call here. So some of them are more senior and should be thinking in terms of how can I be a better sponsor or make sure that I'm involved in allyship. But the converse, if we have junior faculty, how do they, is it something that they just hope someone will be their sponsor, or is there something they can do to say, hey, will you sponsor me and be more proactive about getting noticed?
I'm probably the most junior of the panel, so maybe I'll tackle that. I mean,
Sure,
I
appreciate
think
it.
you can ask, right? There's nothing wrong with asking. And sometimes if you feel nervous about asking, like Dean Stamos or, you can sort of even ask someone who you trust to also make that connection, right? I think that's also okay. Like I could ask yourself, right, to help like with that connection. So I feel that that's also ways that you can sort of get in the radar of those that you would like to sponsor. But I think you have to go out there and put yourself out there, not only by asking, but by doing good work, right? You also have to do good work to get yourself noticed for sponsorship. Um, that would be kind of my thoughts. So.
From a pragmatic point of view, I'm my office and myself are asked to do sponsorship all the time, right? Like we need a letter from the dean to apply for this grant or this, foundation support. That's sort of a transactional sponsorship that's pretty straightforward. Allyship, I think, is more like I'm thinking to myself, well, we have a department chair search and we need some really great people on the search committee. And thinking about groups of people, like we really need a junior faculty. We really need a basic science faculty. We need somebody who's not normally thought of that we want to put in there and give them a chance to participate and contribute to an effort. So I think of allyship sometimes as going outside of the usual circle of people that you think about and reaching out to less less called on and less prominent and less visible people in the organization, whether they're marginalized or whether they're just at a junior level and haven't had opportunities. So I think I look at that as allyship.
So I just met with someone today who did a fantastic job of convincing me to give them a job. And so I'll tell you what they did.
Please do. That's great.
Yeah. So about 6 months ago, they asked someone who knew me pretty well to introduce them to me because they were very interested in medical education. And so that person introduced us by email, said this is a fantastic person. That person basically sponsored them and said, I have a fantastic person you got to meet who's interested in medical education. So I was willing to meet this person. So I met with the person. They told me they were interested in medical education. So I said, okay, well, why don't you meet with this one of my associate deans because it looks like what brings you joy is this particular thing. So I sent him to that person. Last week he emails me and says, well, I met with all the people you said, and is it okay we meet up again? So today I met up with him, and he said, I met with all those people, and they don't have anything for me. And so we started talking some more. He showed me some things he was working on. And so at the end of the meeting, I actually gave him a job. And so part of it is I was really impressed with his perseverance and his passion for what I work in. And my thought was, wow, if someone loves med ed this much, that they're willing to go through the work for 6 months, meeting various people, and then meeting back up with me, this is someone I want in my office. And so this is just a good example of, putting yourself out there, getting someone to introduce you, meeting the people who are in decision-making roles, and then following up. Just, be very positive, be very energetic, have ideas, and follow up with them. And I think that if you continue to do that, you can find someone who's willing to take a risk on you or take you in as one of their mentees, which now I'm going to do. And so that's just an example of someone I just met today that now has a position in my office.
We were just talking actually in the Humanities Center last week about how unhelpful it is to tell graduate students who are going to a conference, make sure you talk to all the senior, people in your field and introduce yourself, and how intimidating that can be. And I think this is a great example of what can happen when you work your connections. But there are also kind of, I would say, softer ways to start to get both to be around people who you might want to be a mentor or a sponsor, or who you might be interested in mentoring or sponsoring. And part of that is showing up where people are. It's harder when we're doing things on Zoom, but if there are, you know, uh, rounds talks or, different kinds of things where you have a chance to encounter people in a less formal situation, and you could say like, oh, will you introduce me to so and so, or just it's easier to go up and chat with someone in that kind of setting before or after the talk, and also ask questions. I found that one of the best ways to get on um, into people's view is if you're at something where you have the opportunity to ask questions, like really be thinking, what's a question that would be meaningful to me and demonstrates my interest in this topic? Because when you ask a good question like that, I found often then someone might come up and start talking to me because they said, oh, I really appreciated that question, or I want to understand more, or I totally disagree with you, or whatever. And so, um, as you're starting to kind of build your network and get a feel of who people are, I think also, for senior faculty to show up where early career faculty are, and early career faculty to show up where senior faculty are.
Right, so I would just add to that, which is probably a bad idea, but if you ever get an email from me, at the bottom of that is a link where you can click on a Calendly invite and book a time, 15-minute, 30-minute time on my calendar. It's all kind of semi-automated. So A, reach out and do that. But B, this is the perfect time for folks to either use the chat box here or just to unmute yourself and ask a question of leadership while you've got us all in front of you. So I say a very similar thing to my graduate students and postdocs about going to conferences and making sure that you're present when you're there, making sure that you ask questions and let them know who you are. And you never know what happens when you have those connections and how you might end up having a mentor that's at a different institution even, but still that can be quite useful when there are job searches or other opportunities that come up. So always networking is always a good thing. All right, no questions. We have a question. So please, Ayan, you want to unmute yourself?
Hi, thank you. My name's Ayan Rajkaria. I'm a neonatologist by profession. I am the program director of the fellowship program here at UCI. I kind of fell into this position of medical education, something that I have been involved with throughout my career and has been a passion. But I would like to know, how important is it in today's day and age to have a certification or professional education in medical education?
Great question, and I am definitely going to pass that over to our expert KV.
Well, obviously I'm biased. I do think if you're not, well, I encourage all of my deans or anyone pursuing a dean position to at least get a master's in education, because I do think that over time these roles in medical education, the senior roles, are going to be people with these degrees. So even within my own team, I help them and encourage them to get a master's in education. So practically all the senior level deans have them. Now, I think in terms of leadership and other medical education things, I do think professional development is extremely important. So to do it well in our culture in medical education has been the Socratic thing, it's almost an apprenticeship. What we learn how to teach based on someone else teaching us, and we carry that through, and we're automatically thrust into these teaching roles in this in medical education. But I think as this evolves as a career pathway, to do it well, absolutely, I recommend professional development. So if you're, I know in PEDS there are leadership and medical education tracks you can take, programs you can take, or within your own field. And I definitely recommend signing up for those. A lot of the different disciplines also have mentorship programs for education, and I recommend those as well. So I would say that to be a really good program director, or clerkship director, future dean in education, that you should always be what we tell our students to be, which is always learning, always growing. We call ourselves medical students forever, because we really feel like you should be always learning. So no matter what, where you are in your career, you should be learning, and you pass that down to the people you teach. So I do recommend it for someone who's getting into these leadership roles, which you have now. Congratulations.
All right, well, that was a perfect forum for getting a question answered. In the chat, someone has asked, what are the key factors that make an impactful mentor? Um, some responses being listen carefully, center the mentee in the relationship, create a trusting environment, proactive advocacy. Is there anything else the panel would add to that about what are factors that make an impactful mentor?
I think it seems self-explanatory, but time, because I do think that sometimes people take on way too many mentees because they're in certain roles, everyone wants to work with them. So really, if you're in the position of being a mentor, because I do see some senior faculty members here, leaders, is, to really, whoever you take on, to really invest in them and invest in time and longitudinal relationship to help them get to their goals. So I would think that that is also an important thing to consider, is your time and your ability to invest in that person. There are shorter term relationships, like just, coaching, or maybe short term mentorship. But I think if you're really going to take someone on and see a junior faculty member through to their career goals, just make sure that you aren't taking on more than you can give, and that you're really investing the time in that person.
And I just had started writing this, but I'll say it also out loud. Clarifying expectations. How much time do you have available? Are there things that you can't provide mentorship on, and that they might need to find someone else to assist them with that? And I think, as KB just said, people who want to be good mentors often will take on a lot more than maybe they have time for. And part of that, though, is also saying, I'm available to answer questions by email, but I can only meet once a month. Or why don't we, I'm not always available to answer last minute questions by email, but why don't we have just a weekly 15-minute check-in, or every 2 weeks, or something like that. So being really clear about any boundaries or constraints that you have as a mentor, and also for the mentee, really trying to think through and articulate what you would like to get out of a mentorship relationship, to think carefully about that. And things can grow and develop organically, but often at the beginning, having some more clearer kind of ways of structuring the mentorship can help.
Alison?
Hi, thank you for the wonderful panel. My name is Aisan Fatehzadeh. I'm actually a new surgeon here. I just joined between the community and the new Irvine hospital. I just came from Duke. So I actually selfishly want to ask a question about just how do we kind of start from scratch at a new institution in regards to getting visibility, finding people who can serve as your mentors, sponsors, allies, so all the things that we're talking about, or for people who have been at UCI for some time but just feel like they aren't getting the visibility that they need. So I'm kind of taking a little bit of a different step with my career, and also obviously new location, new place. So just how do you kind of start from scratch again?
One of the
Namisha.
things is, I will mention that, and this might be a question that's asked later, but I will mention that Academic Affairs Office, the faculty development deans like Dr. Parekh, Dr. Cummings, are excellent places to start if you really just don't know all the resources out there. Because you mentioned you're a surgeon. I just had actually a breakfast with a group of surgeons maybe a few weeks ago, an amazing place to eat, which I'll tell you about if you're interested. But it's a fusion Vietnamese restaurant and it was amazing. But all we did was meet for brunch and talk about, what are some of the things we want to achieve and how do we get there, and questions about building networks. And it was just a nice conversation with a group that met regularly. And they were surgeons, but they invited me as an honorary surgeon just to talk about my role and talk about mentorship in particular. And so that would be a great group for you if you're looking for a way to build some connections and people. Several of them already have some roles in leadership. Others are trying to build that. And so I recommend you be part of that group. It's so fun and you get great. They always choose really great places to eat.
I would also add that we have a list of faculty who've volunteered to be mentors. You can email me at Rachel, who's sort of administrating this, has a list. And there's so many faculty who've like put their name on the list. So they're ones that are more research oriented or career or different. And so if you want a mentor in a different department or division, there's a large list of faculty who we have, everyone said yes, we asked. So that everyone wants to mentor. So
All right, well, it sounds like you need to email KV and also Rachel, who hosts the meeting. Uh, Dean Parekh is here, so I'll introduce you to Namisha, who
Hi,
you could chat with too. Go ahead, Namisha.
hi, Erin. Sorry I was late. The other thing, joined that group. I was invited to have brunch with that group this past weekend, so I think that's a good group. But I would also add the list that Emily's mentioning. We have it on our faculty development sites through a SharePoint, so we have a whole list of mentors. We are now revamping so we're going to have different resources coming up in 2026. We are revamping new faculty orientation, and it's going to be an in-person event. So even though you just started, please come and join that event, even though it's later. That's always going to be a good way to kick off and meet new people. And we have an HS mentoring committee event coming up in April. So that may be another avenue to meet other like-minded people who are looking for mentors. It's going to be just a preview, is going to be a session on how to improve your mentoring skills to trainees, and at a faculty level as well. So we do have events coming up. And so I would encourage you to do that. And I think kind of also just on a day-to-day sort of ground clinical way is try to go meet everyone as you're in clinics, as you're in the ORs, and just introduce yourself. That's a very powerful way. You're going to be working with a lot of new people. So I think there are several new people in the same boat with you.
Excellent. So we are getting some mentorship, some sponsorship, and some allyship happening all at the same time here. So. So this kind of maybe we should just open this up more to the panel. Is one of the questions we actually had was how can early career faculty begin cultivating sponsorship relationships when they lack senior connections?
I actually wanted to just briefly talk about that one of the questions was about how to be a good ally. And there's a group, it's called Right to Be, Right, RIGHTTOBE, in the website.org. And what they do is bystander intervention training. And it's really this UCI Student Services has offered it, and I took it through there, even though I don't work with undergraduate students. But they have free trainings on their website. They have other resources, and much of it is about if you're kind of out in public in a situation and how might you intervene as an ally. But it's also applicable in any kind of situation. So if that's something you are wondering, like, how can I feel more comfortable speaking up and speaking out on behalf of someone else? I recommend looking at that website and their resources. And it's the kind of thing, like I said, Student Services sponsored a training. They did several, and I took one of them. So it's also something if you wanted to do a training for School of Medicine faculty, that you could also work directly with them and hire them.
Brian, do you want to ask your question about the sponsorship opportunities for younger faculty?
Sure. Let me go find that one again. Yeah, how can early career faculty begin cultivating sponsorship relationships when they lack senior connections? I think we've heard a couple of ideas. Somebody, actually, Dr. Chow mentioned that committees are great opportunities to meet mentors, not exactly sponsorship, but good way to meet people is to get on a committee. Don't get on too many if you're a junior faculty member, but we also do need service in the School of Medicine, so we do encourage that you are a member of at least one or two committees. But any other ideas from the panel about how early career faculty can begin cultivating sponsorship relations?
I think from both sides, look for opportunities to nominate someone, whether that is to do something, within the School of Medicine or more broadly at UCI, or whether that is for some kind of external award or recognition or opportunity to participate in some kind of training. And I think I really encourage our senior faculty to always be on the lookout for that and to think about who they might want to nominate, and we're available to help, depending on what it is. But also, for junior faculty, early career faculty, to also be looking out for these things. And if there's something you're really interested in, talk to KV or, one of the associate deans and say, I'm really interested in this. Is there someone you think might be interested in nominating someone? And so that you don't necessarily have to go around knocking on doors and saying, will you nominate me? Will you nominate me? But you can get a reference to someone who, off of that list of available mentors or from other connections they have, to connect you with someone to support you in that process.
Yeah, I think look for opportunities to volunteer, right, where help is needed. Talk to your division chief, your department chair, dean's, team, members of the dean's team, vice deans, associate deans, and just let people know that you're willing and able and available, and then say yes when you're called upon and do a great job. And try to show up in person if you have the choice of in person versus virtual. Make those connections. Let people know who you are. They'll be impressed by your actions, by your activities, and then they'll think about you next time they need some additional help. And that's sort of how you elevate yourself career-wise in many cases.
It's a great, I've seen that happen many times, that you're asked to do something and you say no, and then the senior people get tired of asking, like that person's not engaged. So if they ask you to do something and it's not exactly what you want to do, either do it anyway and do a great job at it, you'll get noticed, or respond with that's not really my direction, but I'm happy to do B or C instead, so that you're still in their minds as to what other opportunities come up.
Can I ask a question to the panel?
Absolutely.
Could each of you or a few of you share an example of someone who sponsored you or advocated for you and how it changed your career path?
Well, I mentioned earlier Dean Stamos, and we've been together for what, 10 years now. On a constant basis, he's always sponsoring me or being an ally or being a mentor or coach. So I would say a lot of these things blend, like I had mentioned earlier. So I'll use a different example since I had mentioned him earlier. Early in my career, there was a inflection, this point where it's kind of like they talk about sliding door moments or where you could have gone this way or that way. And I mentioned this before in other forums, but Rebecca Brusalis James, who is not a physician but is actually one of my long-term mentors. She's just amazing, has great emotional intelligence, and is very no nonsense when she talks to me. Like if I get a little bit too down on myself or something, she's like, nah, like she doesn't let me go down that path. Extremely strong mentor. But there was a point in my career where I did not know what I wanted to do, like if I wanted to continue in this path or do something else. And I would say that she is the reason that I'm still here because I had a lot of questions about where do I want to be, where I want to go, what I want to do with my career. And she just asked me a lot of questions about, what makes you happy? What do you love about UCI? And but also she said, don't, you know, don't quit over a certain person at the time that I felt like I didn't mesh with. She said, you're, if you stay here, you're going to rise to the top. The cream rises to the top. You're cream. Like, don't let one person get you down. She said, just do your thing, like be the awesome person you are, put in the work, show your talent, do your thing, and everything's going to work out. And I trusted her on that and did my thing and did a good job. And then just, you know, good things happen and you continue to get noticed and you continue to get promotions and things. But I would say that kind of very confident mentorship and direction setting and not allowing me to go down a very negative self view was extremely important and why I've been here 20 years now because she was right and I love being here. I think this is a great place to grow as a faculty member. There's always opportunities that come up that you can take advantage of. And people are nice here. People want to help you. People want to see you succeed. And so I would say there's no better place than I've seen. And I travel the country in many different schools, but I think our culture is very open, very wanting to help junior faculty succeed, who are energetic, want to do well. But I would just say someone like her, find someone like that that's just not no nonsense, is going to tell you the truth and really help you grow and believe in yourself. And that's going to make a difference in your career.
Yeah, Rebecca has mentored many of us.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. So I had an early mentor who was not at UCI, not at UCLA where I was before I was here, but was my former mentor from my training days and remained a mentor throughout the first 20 years of my career and was, in my same specialty and was quietly advocating for me constantly at a high level across my specialty, giving me numerous opportunities, and then had a chance to pay it back to him actually about 8 years ago, which was really an incredible moment for me. And then my other mentor was Dave Hoyt, our former chair of surgery, who came in from UCSD, did a great job, took me under his wing, named me vice chair of the department. And then when he left, he went to leadership and said, you should put Michael Stamos as chair of the department. And so that's a great example of how that mentorship went. So for me.
And I would say be open to being mentored in something you don't necessarily think you need, but someone might see something within you and can open up, that will open up doors. When I first got out of graduate school, I worked for a cultural nonprofit as a program director. It was a small nonprofit, and our accounting person would come into my office and say, I'm going to teach you how to make a budget. I'm going to teach you how to read budgets. I'm going to teach you how to read financial statements. And I would say, I'm the humanities content person. I don't need to know this. But she insisted, and she really worked with me to understand that budgets and financial statements tell a story, that we can use them to tell a story, but also we can get a lot of information, a story out of them. And she just worked consistently with me over a number of years and encouraged me and gave me opportunities around financial management. And I will say, of all the things that has most contributed to my career advancement, it's knowing that, because there are a lot of humanists out there who are content people. But when I can come in and say, actually, I can do all this content, but I also I'm strong in financial management. That has opened up so many doors for me to grow in the aspects of my career that I really value. So if someone, I mean, there are situations where someone says, you have to do this and I'm going to force you to learn it. But if someone you have a relationship with says, I think it might really benefit you to do this or learn this or take this opportunity, be open, because sometimes people do see things that we don't necessarily see.
A comment that Katie made about somebody being honest with you as a good mentor. Sometimes a good mentor also has to tell somebody, this is not a good role for you, and try to steer you in a different direction, right? And I had that occasion about 3 years ago. We had one of our really great faculty who wanted to be a candidate for our chair position we had open. And I had to counsel them that, no, this is really not the right role for you. And yes, you can apply for it. I'll encourage you to apply for it, but realistically, it's not the right role for you. And that person then got an amazing role, arguably larger than a chair role, and is thriving today. Because I think it's just important to be honest with them and know what is their skill set and what's the skill set of the position you're looking at. And then, like Dr. Le-Bucklin said, is it really what you want? Do you really want to be a chair, or do you just want the title? I mean, what is the skill set you bring? What do you want to develop, and what do you hope to do with your career?
Dr. Chow, you want to share an example of who sponsored or advocated for you, how it changed your career?
Well, I would say the philosophy in general, and I don't want to keep everyone here too late, is like they do, like everyone has said, they have provided time. They've also, like everyone has said, has also provided constructive feedback, right? And it's like, hey, this is an area you need to work on, right? And you're getting better at this, right? So I would say that is something that's always been very good, and giving honest feedback. And I appreciate constructive, sort of difficult feedback. And since you trust them and so you have a relationship with them, you really take that to heart. I would say that. So.
Dr. Parekh, I'm going to actually turn the table on you and ask, because I have not heard, what about mentorship in your career? How did you get to where you are?
So I've had a lot of different mentors. I think we have, like for me, I have different clinical mentors in my field. I've had different leadership mentors. I think I share this story with a lot of people. I think early on in my career, I used to work with Dean Stamos in the clinics. Many of you may not know that, but he helped me really build up my career clinically because he advocated for me in front of the patients, saying she knows her IBD. I'm the surgeon, but you don't need surgery. And I think just having someone like that really gave me the confidence to build up my clinical practice and career. And I thought that's one of the mentors I always think about. There was a time when I was having some difficulties with some of the management. And he actually took me aside and said, "You're doing the right thing. Just keep advocating for yourself." And that sometimes you just need to hear those words. Just like KV said, she heard those words from Rebecca. And I think those small moments are actually the ones I think are the most impactful. So I think we all forget that we're doing those small moments a lot with our trainees, with our residents and fellows, but we also need to do it for each other as well as faculty.
Excellent. Well, we have about 10 more minutes left, in fact, although it's always kind to let people go early if we're done. But I want to open it up again to anybody in the audience uh, and give them a chance to either unmute or type something in the chat and ask something of leadership while we've got them here.
I think it's a quiet group today.
It's a quiet group. They're not self-allying themselves.
Actually, I was going to say this is a good example of the use of silence in coaching, mentoring. Sometimes you just need to sit and wait until the other person's ready. They may not have an answer right away or something they want to say right away. And so being willing to sit in silence is a good skill all the way around.
I will leave with one tip for you guys because there's so many of my deans have been people who on first pass told me they didn't want the job. And it was because almost always they didn't feel ready. And so I just want to say to you that if someone sees something in you and they say, I really think you could do this job, and they're willing to mentor you to succeed in that job, I highly recommend taking it. My whole trajectory started with me being here only 6 months and the program director in PEDS saying, "We're stepping out. And guess what? You're a great teacher. You're going to be the next program director." And I said, "What? I'm barely out of residency. I just came 6 months. I'm pregnant." Like I was just like, this is not. And they said, "No, no, no. You're great. You're going to be the next residency director." And had I never, and they said they were going to help me succeed. And had I not taken that job, I would have never been the next thing, which was the associate dean for GME and the next thing. And so if people are willing to take you on and say, don't worry, we're going to make sure you succeed, take the job. And several of my deans, when I first approached them, didn't feel they were ready. And now they're amazing. They're so amazing in their jobs. But that's what I would say. If someone really believes in you and wants to help you succeed and gives you a job, I would really highly consider it.
I sat on a panel this past week for the Provost Leadership Academy, which is campus-wide, and 3 of the 4 deans on the panel were reluctant deans, meaning they were not looking for the job, they didn't want the job, including me, by the way, and they actually initially turned down the job. And there's something about a reluctant leader that makes them a great leader, in my opinion, in my experience, as opposed to somebody who's out there campaigning for a position. So just keep that in mind as you work through your career. And just because you think you won't enjoy it, don't be sure until you give it a try.
So, and that's great advice. And I think specifically about the folks who don't want the leadership power tend to be, more democratic, more egalitarian leaders. I would also add, there's never the perfect time. There's always going to be some other complications or some other work you got to get done. And sometimes you just got to make the time. And particularly as advised here is in the things that you want to do, that what makes you happy. Nimisha, anything else to close out on?
No, I think those are great parting words and advice from both KV and Dean Stamos. And I would say, please just everyone keep your eye out. We're going to have a lot of new programming coming up in 2026 for monthly on Mondays, mentoring committee events, as well as our leadership academy. So read up on those emails, and feel free to reach out to myself or Brian anytime if you have a question or concern regarding faculty development opportunities, including mentoring and allyship and sponsorship. And thank you for all coming tonight. And thank you to our panelists, really, for taking out the time out of your very busy schedules today to do this panel. And I know we're going to get a lot of views from this panel because we did one similar a couple years ago and we had hundreds, I think we're on thousands on that one. So I'm sure this one will be the same. Thank you again and happy holidays, everybody.
Indeed. And thank you to our panel members for your allyship and for speaking up.
Thank you.